Hello, and welcome to Three Skulls Tavern. I'm Matt, your host, and this is the start of another new another series, on the channel. And this one is, as you probably can see from the description, or the title, and the screenshot, this is of the One Ring. Now, for those of you who follow the channel, you might have been expecting something different. That's because I had been prepping for many months a zombie apocalypse solo game, and had gotten actually quite far, even to the point where I had started recording episode 1 last week and ran into some technical difficulties as I'd changed some things with my PC. Long story short, I couldn't actually record the first episode, but was still planning on doing it when last Thursday Russia invaded Ukraine. And yeah, I started finding that I was getting a lot of anxiety around that event, and kind of thinking about it as it was all kind of unraveling. I realized it was because I had been spending a lot of my free time looking at surviving an apocalyptic event. How long does gasoline stay good for? How long can you eat food out of tins before they go bad? How long can you have solar panels? How long do they last before after the grid, all the power on the grid goes out? All that kind of stuff. And I live in Germany, which isn't really that far from the Ukraine. And yeah, I got quite a lot of anxiety about an apocalyptic event. I'm still kind of anxious about it, but trying not to think about it too much because there's not a lot I can do. And I've kind of come to the conclusion that this post-apocalyptic game, even though it's a zombie apocalypse, not a nuclear apocalypse, was kind of messing with my head a bit. And for my own mental health, and possibly also people might not want to watch that as well at this moment in time. I've decided to do something else last minute. So rather than starting today, as you're watching now, with a new series about a zombie apocalypse using my own Year Zero mini evolved into Year Zero Light, which is what I've prepped, I'm shelving that for a later date. Again, I've done all the prep basically for it, so much so that I could actually be recording the first session. So I do want to come back to that. The timing's just not right. So I have a Patreon campaign. In fact, you can see that I'm kind of mentioning it down here in the on the video, and there's a link to it in the description. And one of the things I do with my Patreon is I let them, my patrons, vote on content for the show. So I picked out a couple of 3 different alternatives to the zombie apocalypse, all of them obviously non-apocalyptic in theme, and pitched them to to my Patreon supporters. And 2 of the results came back in an even tie, and I went ahead and just picked the one that I kind of felt like suited. I was kind of leaning a bit more towards anyway. And that's the One Ring. And the reason I'm coming to this now is because the One Ring is a game that we've run on the channel previously. We ran it last year, a kind of mini series, I guess you would call it, like 4 episodes. And I've been wanting to do a solo One Ring campaign on this channel for quite a long time. I've started planning for it. I've got a lot of interesting things coming out of it. And yet we don't yet have the Strider mode. The official rule set for the solo rules hasn't been released to the Kickstarter backers, of which I am one, yet. So there's this kind of waiting until we get our hands on the Strider mode rules, because I actually want to run it officially. I want to use the official rules to run it so that people can kind of see how the rules work, how I'm implementing them, how, that sort of thing. So that's quite a long introduction for me to basically say I'm going to be running Strider mode, the One Ring 2nd edition, with this series. And before it drops, I'm going to be doing a short series of videos like this one, where I'm basically prepping for that without having seen any of the, without having read any Strider mode rules. So there's a number of things I can do. I mean, you might be thinking, well, why can't you just wait to do that and then just go through it step by step? Well, that's fine, but there are certain things you can do in advance of actually thinking about it, just by getting into the right headspace. And the kind of things I'm going to be doing are things like creating my solo character, thinking about the types of adventures I might be having, and then also prepping Foundry, because I'm going to be running Foundry, and which is a virtual tabletop if you're not familiar. And one of the things with Foundry is that there is no official module coming for the One Ring. There won't be either. Free League have already confirmed it's down to licensing issues. The IP holders have said no to it, which is disappointing, but it just means there's a bit more legwork for me to basically get Foundry populated with what I'm sure are going to be a huge amount of tables and oracles and those sorts of things that all kind of tied to solo play usually. And because Sean Tompkin, who is the author of Ironsworn, and Matt Click from Absolute Tabletop are the authors of Strider Mode, I know that there's going to be a lot of tables, lots and lots of tables. So I want to make sure that those tables are all in Foundry with macros corresponding to them, so that when it comes time to run the game and the game has been released, I've got a lot of stuff set up in the background and ready to go. I just have to basically read through the rules, put the finishing touches on my character, look at how to implement any solo specific rules that might be been added, that sort of thing. And yeah, basically I've done a lot of the legwork to hit the ground running. If you're interested in doing this as well, if you're interested in playing the One Ring solo, then if you follow this series, hopefully, and if you follow along, then kind of we can do this together. Like we can prep for a game together. We don't have to be doing the same type of characters, even the same types of adventures, but thinking about those sorts of things now can be, I think, quite interesting and can be quite helpful in prepping for running it. So, yeah. That's my pitch. That's what this video is about. This first video, actually, I'm going to be focusing just on my character concept, if you will. So I'm not actually going to be statting out my character, but we're going to look through the PDF soon. We're going to look through the steps of character creation, and I'm basically going to narrow... I'm not 100% sure yet exactly the kind of character I want to play. I've got a couple of ideas. But what I want to do here is I want to go through the book, talk about the various options, talk about the bits that are probably going to be a bit more important in solo play, considering we're not going to be playing with a fellowship. I'm going to be trying to play this properly solo, so with a single character kind of wandering around the wilds of Eriador. So yeah, there's a lot of elements of the core rules of the One Ring that aren't going to be applicable because of that. So that is basically what this video is about. That's what the series is about. That's my little introduction out of the way. So without any further ado, I'm going to be jumping over into the PDFs. And I'm on the wrong page, of course. So let me jump over here to the Chapter 3 Adventurers. And essentially, we're going to be kind of rattling through this here. I'm going to rattle through the pages fairly quickly to give an overview before I kind of hone in on where I think the best place to start is. First, which are these things here, the heroic cultures. And we've got a number of them. We've got the Bardings, the Dwarves of Durin's Folk, which are basically relatives of Thorin's company from The Hobbit. The Elves of Lindon. Lindon is an area in the west of Eriador, kind of west of the Shire. We have the Hobbits of the Shire. We have the Men of Bree, Rangers of the North, and that's it. I say that's it, but there is actually a supplement that comes with the Lore Master screen called Rivendell, and Rivendell has an additional culture, heroic culture, and that is the Elves of Rivendell. I can't remember exactly what they're called. I've got the physical one here. Let me just have a quick look. The High Elves of Rivendell. So that's another option. And I'm actually very quickly just going to open up a browser window here, because another thing to look at, this is the Kickstarter page for the One Ring. And down under the stretch goals, under stretch goal number 14, one of the things that was unlocked are a bunch of extra heroic cultures. We have the Wood Elf, the Bjorning, and the Woodmen. These are the cultures that originally came from the first edition from, as you can see here, Rovanion or Wilderland, which is the area to the east of the Misty Mountains. So the Wood Elves are effectively the elves that are in Mirkwood. The Bjornings are the relatives of Bjorn, the the kind of half man, half bear character in The Hobbit. And the woodmen are the men who populate Mirkwood and the areas around Mirkwood. So not exactly the men from Dale. What were they called in the original book, or in the book here? The Bardings, descendants of Bard. They're the people who live kind of more in the wilds. And there are some other cultures in the first edition book. So if we go back to the PDF, I'll actually show from the Adventurer's Companion here from first edition. You can see over here on the right hand side you have all these different cultures, and some of them are kind of pulled together, like it says all dwarves, and there were several dwarf options in first edition. But as you can see here, we have a lot of the options that have been either announced for second edition or already available for second edition are here. The Bardings are there, Bjornings are coming, Men of Bree are there, Dunlendings haven't been announced. We have one dwarf culture only. We have, of the elves, we don't have any Lorien, Lothlorien elves. But we have the Mirkwood elves have been announced. The Wayward elves, I think, might be similar to the elves that are in the core rulebook for second edition. High Elves of Rivendell are here already in the Rivendell supplement. Hobbits, we have the Hobbits of the Shire. There's also like a wild Hobbit variant that are in the kind of around the River Isen, kind of around Mirkwood. They haven't been announced here. Minas Tirith and Riders of Rohan aren't in here. It's too far south from what we've got so far. Men of the Lake are the Bardings that are here. Rangers of the North we have. And the Woodmen have been announced. So as you can see, quite a few of these first edition cultures are going to be either are already here or going to be represented. But not all of them. But that's fine. So those are the first things that come across when you're looking at the character chapter. Then we have the callings. The callings are Captain, Champion, Messenger, Scholar, Treasure Hunter, and Warden. Now, one that you take is probably going to direct the style of your solo game, so I think that's quite important to have a good think about what kind of themes you want to have for your game. Previous experience. Now, I'm going to be ignoring this for now, but I expect there's probably going to be something here about having more than the standard. It says here players have 10 experience points to start to spend on raising skills and combat proficiencies. If you're playing solo, you haven't got a fellowship with you, I imagine there's going to be more there, but we'll have to wait and see how much is going to be there, if there is anything. Same with starting gear. I'm not going to spend too much time thinking about this. This is all what I consider statsing up the character, and that's going to wait until... That's an easy thing to do at the end after I have a character concept in mind. Then we get to the rewards and the virtues. I'm not going to spend any time really thinking about these now. I'm going to wait and see what comes out, whether you get more than one potentially, or if there's certain recommended ones for solo play. And I'll figure that out as well when I'm statting up my character. The company, well, there is no company, so we can ignore that. But part of the company, as you can see here, is a patron and a safe haven. And they have a fellowship rating and a fellowship focus. And that's kind of it for this chapter, right? You got skill points, adventure points, how you spend them, basically. I'm not going to be looking at any of that right now. So really, the stuff I'm going to be looking at are, from the back here, are the patron and the safe haven. So basically having a base, and who the patron is, who's going to be somebody who's going to be... potentially somebody I'm going to be coming back to between adventures, to potentially be a quest giver, if you will, that sort of thing. And there are several options here which are quite interesting. And this is what I'm proposing, rather than going back to the beginning and thinking about which culture I want to be from, what my calling is going to be, etc. I want to think about themes. And when I'm thinking about themes, like what's the theme I want for my solo game? That's going to really determine the theme, like how I want to play, the style of the game I want to play is really going to be, you can see here under agenda, these patrons have agendas that are really driving what they're trying to achieve in Middle-earth. And as an agent of them almost, that really is going to be just instantly driving a lot of roleplay. A nice bit, the reason I'm kind of focusing here on patrons as well is because in the appendix, at the back of the book, we have a big section on patrons. We have almost like 1 to 2 page, 1 to 2 pages per patron, talking about who they are, a little bit of background about them, how, like, what, when you're encountering them, what, what you can expect to see when you're encountering them, that sort of thing. What they're like as a patron, etc., etc. So that's all quite good, really. That's all really good stuff to think about with having, having solo play, having a bit of focus, having something there to drive the story forward, having somebody there who's, you're not just this person where you're trying to think about, how do I exist in Middle Earth? Well, you exist as an agent, if you will, of one of these patrons. And the nice thing about this little table here is that it has these favored callings, right? So this is where I'm going to be starting to look. The safe haven, I can kind of, I want to have a think about it, but it's kind of going to be tied to whoever my patron is, really. So really, it's the patron that I'm kind of most interested in here. And the themes I've been thinking about are, well, one thing I'm very curious about is to look at how this game differs from Forbidden Lands Solo specifically. And the reason I'm interested in that is because I'm the one who's actually writing the official solo rules for Forbidden Lands, and I've run a Forbidden Lands solo campaign on this channel, and I'm very interested in looking at how the One Ring can be played from a sort of an exploration-themed sort of game. So that's what I'm interested in. I'm not so much interested in, for example, Bilbo is interested in recovering lost. Well, that is actually kind of Forbidden Lands. You're looking for ruins. You're going and you're kind of plundering, right? So Treasure Hunter might be a really good calling, and Bilbo could be a really good character to have there. But let's have a look at some of the other ones. Balin obviously is one of the original 12 dwarves in Thorin's company. He wants to reclaim lost strongholds, eliminate enemy lieutenants, etc., or lieutenants, depending where you're from. So that could be interesting as well, because that could be like going to adventure sites that are full of goblins or orcs and clearing them out, kind of hunting orcs. That could be quite interesting as well, and kind of Forbidden Lands-y in a way. Círdan the Shipwright is an elf. He wants to rekindle hope, preserve the lore of the ages. Not so interested in that so much. Gandalf the Grey, warn the free peoples, inspire them to action. I kind of want to veer away from Gandalf because I feel that's, for me, is a bit tropish for Middle Earth. Having Gandalf there as like a main quest giver, just, I don't know, doesn't really interest me that much. I'm kind of more interested in looking at some of these other side characters, if you will. And for that reason, I'm also kind of leaning away from Bilbo a little bit. Then we have Gilrain, daughter of Dirhael, and I think she might be the mother of Aragorn from a quick scan earlier of these patrons. I might be wrong, but she's basically tied. She's one of the Dunedain. She's one of the Rangers, like a mother of like one of the older matriarchs of the Rangers, if you will, if you want to call her a matriarch. And that could be a really interesting choice. If you think about the name of the official solo rules, they're called the Strider mode. And Strider is a reference to, of course, Aragorn at the start of Fellowship of the Ring. When the hobbits first meet him, he's called Strider. And, there's a big draw to playing a Dunedain, a Ranger of the North, who is effectively fighting the enemy, as it says here, defending the weak, and really playing, as you can see here, a sort of Warden type character, maybe a champion as well. So this is a big draw here for me. Effectively would be playing one of the compatriots to Aragorn. In the time, probably might even come across Aragorn, because this takes place between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. That's the default setting here. So it's quite possible that Aragorn might be an NPC that we run into at some point. Then, last but not least, we have Tom Bombadil and Lady Goldberry. And I'm very much drawn to Tom Bombadil, mainly because he didn't feature in the Fellowship of the Ring movie, which I was very disappointed with when it came out. I really liked Tom Bombadil as a character in the books. I liked the Barrow Wights, the Barrow Mounds and the Barrow Wights, I think they were called in Fellowship of the Ring, the book. That was all really, one of the kind of really scary parts of the book when I was a kid reading them for the first time. You had the Nazgul, who were you just got glimpses of on the road as they were kind of harassing the Fellowship. And then you had Tom Bombadil, which is a bit of light relief after the trees in the forest, the old forest. And then these creepy Barrow Wights who almost, kill some of the hobbits. So Tom Bombadil kind of is drawn as well. The agenda there is to protect the land, find and preserve what was buried. That could be quite cool as well. Fits with a warden or a treasure hunter, which is quite good. So, from my perspective, I like the dwarf idea as well, but I do have some plans for how this campaign, how this series is going to go. And a dwarf doesn't necessarily fit in with those plans too well, mainly because of the kind of dwarfish stoicism and, racism, if you will, against the elves. The elves and the dwarves kind of hate each other. That might come into play with some of the ideas I have, and I kind of want to play somebody who's a bit more of a neutral type of character. And because of that, so before I go too far, I'm literally looking at the two bottom options here. We're looking at Gilran and however you pronounce that, I'm not sure, and Tom Bombadil and Lady Goldberry. Now, Tom and Goldberry could be quite a nice option just because I know a little bit more about them, having read Lord of the Rings many times, and being familiar with Lord of the Rings Online, the MMORPG. I remember coming across them when I played that a little bit in the past. Gilrain's a little bit more of an unknown to me, but she is associated with the Rangers. So I'm looking at this as basically playing a human, and I'm going to be either playing, if I decide to play a ranger, then I'm going to be having Gilrain as my patron, and if I decide to play a different type of human, so maybe a barding, for example, barding is a big draw, then Tom Bombadil and Lady Goldberry would be my patrons. So let's go back to the start of this and have a look at those different cultures here. So the bardings, if I was to play a human who is kind of an agent for Tom Bombadil, I would likely be going with either a barding or a man of Bree. The men of Bree aren't as big of a draw as the bardings. The bardings are this cool group of people who are descendants of Bard, and they've left Bard after it's been rebuilt following the Smaug's death, and they've gone off and kind of been doing adventuring, and they've become merchants and trading across the north of Middle Earth. And if I read this little blurb here from characteristics, in fact, if I go up a little bit here, it talks about how each year barding merchants reach new faraway lands as they look outside their borders to expand their trade and influence. Sometimes warriors follow in their wake, hoping to prove their mettle against worthy adversaries, inspired by the king's slaying of the dragon. Now, that's some really good fodder right there for a solo character. They tend to be strong in body and fearless in spirit. The Northmen are the denizens of Middle-earth that many consider to be nearest in kin to the men of the West. The Dunedains, in other words. They are strong-limbed with fair hair, although dark or even black hair is not unknown. Barding men tend to keep beards and often let their hair blah 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 blah. They rarely become adventurers before their 18th year and retire in their 40s when they return home to serve their family and folk. When abroad, they may be recognized by their gear, as they often carry equipment of superior make. Interesting. Unlike most denizens of Wilderland, bardings prefer to use swords over axes and naturally favor the bow, after the example of their king. Now that really does draw quite a bit, and thinking about a kind of young character who's maybe just set out, so he's maybe 18, maybe 19, something like that, who has set off, met Tom Bombadil, been taken with Tom and Goldberry, and kind of won over by them, and that's just really pulling to me right now. I really like how this is kind of worded. Their standard of living is prosperous. They're kind of wealthier as well, which is going to make things a little bit easier in solo play when it comes to paying for things in Bree or various towns and villages I come across. Cultural blessing, stout-hearted. Stories tell that the Bardings lived under the shadow of a great dragon for decades. Yeah. Okay, so Bardings is a really strong choice. I do really like the ideas here. I'm very much leaning strongly towards this, also because it's not the typical option of going with a ranger, as I'm sure many people will be doing, and is the original idea I had when I was thinking about doing this. So I'm just going to skip very quickly over to those Rangers of the North here. And I mean, a lot of people are going to know about them. I don't think I need to read too much about them here. They are secret people, severely diminished in numbers with the passing of 1,000 years. They are the last descendants in the north of the Dunedain, who are the kings among men that once came to Middle-earth over the sea out of Westernesse. When they do not disguise their features, they are tall and lordly, towering above most men. Okay, standard of living is frugal, so they aren't about, trading and wealth and that sort of thing. So it's going to be a little bit harder for them. They're going to probably have to do some side quests and things for people to I don't know, like earn favor to be able to stay in an inn for free because they haven't got any money, that sort of thing. So there's going to be a little bit more maybe bartering going on as you come across settlements of civilized folk. Their cultural blessing is that they are kings of men, and they get a little attribute bump to an attribute of their choice, which is probably really useful in... it actually is very useful for solo play. So they're a really solid choice, I think, for solo play. But just, I think for me, I'm really drawn to this idea of a young barding adventurer who is aligned with Tom Bombadil and Lady Goldberry. And I think that's what I'm going to go with. So, I have my culture. My culture is a barding. We're going to now look at my calling. And the calling's here. We've got a captain. When the world is on the brink of ruin, it is the duty of all individuals of worth to rise and take the lead, whatever the risk. You have chosen to put... Okay, hold on a second. We're going to jump back over here to the patrons. We're going to look at Tom Bombadil and Lady Goldberry. Their favorite callings are wardens and treasure hunters. So I need to look at both of those and see which of those two. I mean, you don't have to necessarily stick to these, but I think it's an interesting idea to kind of stick with the archetype a little bit, if you will, for the patron that you're going with. So I'm going to look at the warden. The warden's here, and the treasure hunter's here. So treasure hunter says, when the world has seen the passing of the glory of many dwarven kings and elven lords, and their heritage is now buried in orc-infested dungeons. Hordes of stolen gold and jewels, guarded by fell beasts, beckon all who dare to find them. You seek to recover what is lost, even when it means braving unspeakable dangers. Yeah, interesting. And this kind of favored skills here are explore, scan, and stealth. So very much like kind of like a stealthy, scouty type of character. I mean, it is a burglar, really. You look here, additional distinctive feature is burglary. This is effectively Bilbo Baggins, right? And I don't really necessarily see myself as that type of character. I see myself more as a young warrior out to earn glory and, yeah, that sort of thing. So I'm going to look at the Warden. In this age of the world, when shadows grow deeper with every passing year, you have sworn to defend all who cannot defend themselves. Often your choice forces you to forsake civilized areas to better guard their inhabitants from what lurks right outside their fences. This has made you a stranger in the eyes of the common folk, a threatening figure like those you are protecting them from. Okay, maybe not so much if I'm playing a young one, but that seems a bit more in line with what I'm wanting to play. The favored skills are awareness, healing, and insight. Now that seems like it's good for survivability, which is going to be good for solo play. That links a bit nicer into exploration as well, with survival and exploration. I do have to say explore and scan are very, very good for exploration as well. So I think these are both really well suited to exploration type of builds, if you will. Additional distinctive feature, Shadow Lore. You've recognized that there is a hidden thread unifying most of what is malicious, dark, and terrible in Middle-earth, and that the thread is thickening year after year. A quality shared by the wise of the land, the truth behind this knowledge is becoming clearer as time passes. Okay, I think I'm going to go with the Warden. It just seems like it's fitting my character concept a lot better. It's got some cool survivability favored skills, which are going to really help with me playing solo, being able to heal myself, having a bit more of awareness of things around me, harder to kind of get ambushed. Insight's going to be good as well. And just quickly looking at some of the other ones, Captain and Champion. Captain really isn't a good one for playing solo, I don't think, because this is basically like a leader. Champion might work This is really a kind of this is like Boromir, as I see it, kind of athletics on hunting. Again, this could be a really good choice. A kind of champion, a champion ranger would be a really cool choice for solo play. That would make a lot of sense. But for me, I think I'm going to go with a barding warden. Cool. Starting gear, the war gear, we've already talked about. They mainly bardings prefer swords and bows. So I'm probably going to be taking a great bow and a sword. Yeah. Cool. We've got prosperous was their standard of living. So I get 3 useful items. That's also going to be really helpful for could be really helpful for survivability as well. All right. And then the safe haven. I mean, the safe haven is pretty obvious. We're going to be staying at Tom Bombadil and Lady Goldberry's house. I think it has a name from memory. If I go to my Patron bit in the appendix at the back and look up Tom Bombadil and Lady Goldberry, which are here. The House of Tom Bombadil, so it doesn't really have a name. Okay, it's found just beyond the Old Forest to the east, where the Withywindle runs down from its spring in the Barrow Downs. Under Tom's roof and at his table, guests will find their heart contented with peaceful slumber, fine company, joyous song, and all the simple pleasures that come with a humble heart. Nice. Perfect. Sounds like a really, really good place to have a safe haven. All right. Them as patrons. Let's have this little read as well here, because I think this is going to be quite good. Though Tom's power is as deep as the earth is old, his mastery seems to be limited to his little land, within bounds that he has set. Within those bounds he fears nothing, and he is seemingly unconquerable. But he won't step beyond them for any reason. Adventurers winning his friendship and that of the Goldberry will find that when called, they appear almost instantly anywhere within their domain. Even the weather itself seems to behave according to their needs and whims. Tom knows all the ways and the lore of the Old Forest, and he can speak at length about all manner of such things, for there is little in his realm that he does not understand fully. He tells many remarkable stories, speaking softly or even singing, inspiring strange flights of fancy, vistas of untold history, and of things forgotten, both majestic and meager. Tom asks little of his friends directly, but he might point them in the direction of a problem that needs solving, whether it's an unruly wight from the Barrow Downs, or a calf lost within the Old Forest. Goldberry seems to have no need of anything beyond what she has, but she might call upon a company of well-meaning heroes to aid others in need. Okay. Ooh, my video seems to be... see, this is the technical problem I was referencing before. Let me quickly stop my video, stop my webcam. Start it up again. There we go. Okay, that was interesting. My video is probably going to do that again, but I'm about to wrap up. So this is something I need to figure out why it's happening. But basically, I've come up with my character concept. I'm going to be playing a barding. Reading through the Tom and Goldberry as patrons blurb, maybe I should have done that at the beginning. It seems like I'm restricting myself to be playing around the Old Forest. But it might be that there are some hooks that are coming from the Old Forest that are leading out to some other places that might lead me, like a kind of like a chain reaction, starting from something happening in the Old Forest, leading me out to other places. So that's interesting. It's going to be a bit of a challenge there, I think, to think about how beyond the scope of the Old Forest, because I don't really want to play a campaign where I'm limited to things happening in the Old Forest. But it kind of looks like that's the way these two as patrons are kind of written up, and it makes sense for how Tom is presented in the book as well. But maybe Tom is aware of things, bigger things that are happening. I'm going to reread the section on Tom Bombadil in Fellowship of the Ring as well, just to get a better kind of sense of what the character is about, because I haven't actually reread that in a long time. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to be doing. I'd love to hear your comments, what your thoughts are. If you're planning to play solo as well, and you think this is a useful, going to be a useful series, like just doing the prep for it, leave just a comment in the comments below. And yeah, let's compare and see what people are thinking about playing. Obviously, we don't have Strider mode yet. There might even be additional callings. There may even be additional cultures coming out of it. I doubt that, but it's possible that could happen as well. And maybe something else. Maybe there are even extra patrons or something as well that are maybe a bit more suitable for solo play. But as it stands, I'm 95% sure that this is what my character is going to be about. I'm definitely playing a barding Warden. That just really draws to me. And it's the Patron I'm not 100% sure about whether I'm going to be changing to someone else, whether I'm going to be sticking with Tom and Goldberry as patrons. I need to do a little bit more digging into that. I'll talk about it in my next video at the start about whether I've decided to stick with that or go with someone else. And in the next video, I'm going to be talking about adventures and adventure seeds and what kind of adventures I might be wanting to run with it. Looking at adventure hooks, really, that sort of thing. Again, I haven't seen what's in Strider mode, so I don't really know if they're going to be kind of quest tables and that sort of thing to get you started. But what I do have is I have a bunch of first edition The One Ring books, and of those we have Bree, Ruins of the North. Ruins of the North is going to be great because this is a collection of adventures set in and around Rivendell. So it's not that far from... not that far. It's kind of on the right side of the Misty Mountains. We have Tales. I have Tales from Wilderland, which is a set of adventures on the other side of the Misty Mountains. So maybe if I end up going back home to Dale, maybe some of these might come into play as I'm crossing over, going that direction. And the Laughter of Dragons. I mean, this could come into play as well because this is set in and around Erebor, which is the Lonely Mountain, which has Dale at its base. So this is a collection of adventures around there. So this might actually come into play. I might actually ignore a lot of what's in second edition, just use the mechanics from it, and look at adventures in and around Dale. And if that happens, then I'll be picking a different patron. I'll be picking a patron in Dale itself, probably. And yeah, that's something to think about. So I'm gonna be thinking about that, thinking about my patron, thinking about where I want to be setting my game. I do want it to be kind of exploration based, so I think having it based in Dale, which is where I'm from, doesn't make as much sense because I'm probably going to be doing just more missions in and around the Dale area. So having me be from Dale but off really, really far means I'm already interested in exploration as a character. I've got probably Wanderlust, which has led me out there. I'm looking to make a name for myself, to seek out glory and adventure. And to, fight against the shadow as you're kind of expected to do as a player character in The One Ring. So, with all that said, there's a lot to think about before my next video. And in my next video, I'm going to be honing in on the types of adventures I'm going to be looking at. The region of Middle-earth I'm going to be kind of trying to base my adventures around. So, again, when the One Ring... when Strider mode drops... I only need to think about how I implement those rules and those tables into where I want to be playing. Then, after I've done that, the next video in the series will be about setting up Foundry. Starting to think about how I'm going to, which maps I'm going to put into Foundry, what kind of tables I might want to populate, all the relevant stuff from the books I need to get into there. So things like the stats for NPCs, or enemies, I should say. NPC, I'll probably create an NPC generator where at a click of a button I can create any number of a random character from a number of different cultures and that sort of thing. So there's lot to do still. I wanted to try and keep these around the 30-minute mark. This has gone a little bit over, but I did spend a little bit of time at the beginning talking about this change from the zombie game. So thank you very much once again for watching. And again, if you just leave a comment in the comments below about whether you plan on either watching this series or even better if you're planning on starting your own solo series or solo game when Strider mode is released. I'd love to hear the sort of ideas that people have for the type of characters they want to play, because I mean you could really play anything. You could play a hobbit treasure hunter, you could play a hobbit. I mean you don't have to do the exploration survivability thing that I'm kind of leaning towards. To compare it to Forbidden Lands. So there's lots of different ways to play this game, and there's lots of different callings to kind of cater for lots of different tastes. So yeah, let me know what you think. And as always, if you haven't already, if you could hit that subscribe and like button, it really does help the channel to grow. And with that, I'm going to leave you for now. Thanks very much.